today's episode of Ask Jilly, we're going to talk about a couple of things that relate to bead weaving. I've gotten questions from a number of people on how to improve their tension in their bead weaving. And there's a couple of things that you can do. One of the things is you'll always notice that when I am beading, let me take you to my hands here and kind of show you this and I didn't think to put a bead out on my board here, but as I take a stitch, you'll notice that I put my finger over the bead that my needle is going through, and I kind of pinch down on that when I am pulling my thread through. And when I'm pulling my thread through, I pull until it's nice and tight. So I get this nice and taut right here. Pull it nice and tight, and by putting my finger there, I am kind of holding some of that tension into that bead right there. Then I tend to let go at that point, which then loosens the tension up a little bit more. But one of the things that you can do to hold some of that tension in is to take your working thread, and you can kind of bring it over your finger like this and hold it tight there with your other finger. So in addition to holding that tension tight on that thread, it also gets the thread out of the way for you to be able to take your next stitch. So now you're not going to accidentally loop that thread because you're holding it back with your finger. You'll also see me do that sometimes. Another thing that you can do is, especially when you're starting out, use your tail thread. I will have a lot of students who will actually take the tail thread and they will wind it around one of their fingers back here. By holding some tension and tightness on that tail thread, especially, like I said, especially when you're starting out, that will also really help you keep a tighter tension going. Then my last tip for that is to use some kind of wax. And generally, I personally do not wax my fire line. I know a lot of people do wax their fire line, and one of the reasons that they do is because this wax, when it coats your fire line, let me kind of show you how this is done. I just take my thread or fire line, whatever I'm using, put my finger over it, and you're just pulling it between your thumb and the wax there. And it puts a nice fine coating of wax on your fire line. And then I will take my finger and run it across there to get rid of any clumps of wax that might be there. But when you wax it like that, what happens is it will, it gets a little sticky. It doesn't, I'm using the microcrystalline wax because it doesn't make like your hand sticky or anything, but you'll kind of feel it makes it more tacky, I guess is the way to put it. And that thread will hold better. It'll stick better inside the beads, and that will help your tension if you go ahead and wax it. Let me talk for a second. That brings me to my next question, which is, people do ask me, do I wax my fire line? Do I wax my thread? What kind of wax do I use? Some of those kinds of questions. So the answer is I always try to wax thread. So if I'm using Nymo or 1G or Eslon thread or any of those kinds of threads, I do actually wax it. Here's the benefits of waxing it. It makes your thread stronger. It actually absorbs into the thread. It keeps your thread from fraying as much because especially if you're removing beads, in addition to beading forward, sometimes we have to bead backwards, right? And that will cause a lot of fraying to your threads. So waxing helps that not happen quite as easily. And it also helps again with thread, the function of putting this onto your wax and pulling it through, it helps stretch out your thread. Because whenever you're working with a thread, you generally want to pre-stretch it so that stretch doesn't actually come out in your piece. Well, this actually just helps some of that stretch come out. So that's another reason for doing that. Now with waxing fire line, I'm less likely to wax fire line. The only times that I do are, like I said, if I need more tension in my piece and I feel like I'm not being able to get it just through my hand strength kind of thing, waxing will give me that little extra edge. The other time is, you know how you end up with that tail that comes across over your beading needle here, and it sometimes will really, you'll get a piece that particularly wants to whip around and cause knots and that kind of thing. Then using wax on your fire line in that case will frequently keep that from happening as much. You won't get as many knots if you have one of those pieces that kind of wants to fight back. So that's another reason for using it with the fire line. The reasons that I don't always use it with Fireline is because it doesn't soak into Fireline. It just is a coating on the outside. And if you use a lot of wax on your Fireline, then what happens is it just ends up clumping up inside the bead holes. Now, it's not really a huge problem and sometimes you can actually see it in between the beads in your finished piece. Not a huge problem, because what you end up doing is you just run hot water over your piece. Luckily, because you made it with Fireline is waterproof, so you can just run it under hot water and melt that wax away. So it's easily fixed, but it's just one more thing to do, which is one of the reasons why I tend to not do it. Just thought of another benefit, though, of waxing the Fireline that I forgot to mention is, you know, that coating that you get on your fingers, that smoky coating? It helps keep that smoky coating from getting on your fingers if you do wax that Fireline. Let me talk to you about what I'm using here. This is a microcrystalline wax. It is a synthetic wax. Unlike beeswax, which was the more traditional thing, beeswax is more sticky, and so it makes your fingers a little more sticky also. The beeswax can also go rancid on you over time, and then it also dries out on you over time. So I think most beaders in the bead world, if they have tried the microcrystalline wax, have switched over to the microcrystalline wax. I certainly have. I don't even own any beeswax anymore. Then there's another product out there called Thread Heaven. And Thread Heaven is also a thread conditioner, but it works a little bit differently in that it causes the two ends of your thread to repel each other. The beeswax makes them stick together. The Thread Heaven makes them repel each other. So again, it is meant to keep tangles from happening. It will still soak into thread and reduce fraying and all that kind of stuff. So I actually suggest that you have one of both on hand, have the wax on hand, have the Thread Heaven on hand. Try them both, see what works best for you. Sometimes one product might work better, sometimes the other might work better. But that is the definitive answer on all the waxing stuff. Then, the number one most asked question that I get for the last several years, since I've started the YouTube channel, is, hey, what's that board that you're beading on and where can I get one? I can't tell you how many times I have answered that question. So let me answer it here. These boards that I'm beading on are called bead on it boards. I have done an entire video on the bead on it boards. I love these to pieces. This is the only surface that I bead on anymore. It is a nice sturdy piece of wood underneath here, nice and sturdy. I can put this on my lap and bead with it. And so it's not, if you're used to just maybe working on one of those Velux mats, you know, you can't move it very easily. This you can move really easily because it's nice and solid and sturdy. You've got the bumper here so your beads aren't going to fall off. I actually really like using the little edge here as I'm working along and I find beads to cull out or that, you know, maybe they don't have a hole or they are funky shaped or whatever. I just push them off to the side into that one of those little divots, and I know that those are beads that I'm just going to throw away later. So I just take I pinch them out later and throw them away. So that's just kind of a good, just get it out of the way spot for me. These are made in the United States by a woman who created them. She has a patent on these. If you see them made by other people, they have been ripped off. So you do want to get the official Bead On It board brand. They are not super cheap. This is an investment piece. So one of the other questions that I get is, which size do you recommend starting out with? And the answer is this size right here. I think this is a really good all-purpose size. This is an 8 by 11 size. And so this works if you work in kind of a medium space. Now I get the great big ones here for when I'm filming because it gives us a bigger surface for me to lay beads out or whatever I need to. These are significantly more expensive, the bigger ones. So I think this is the good starter size. See if you like it. There are about 6 or 7 different sizes. She's got all different color surfaces. She's got all different color materials on the bumpers, that kind of thing. And so I just think it's a really high quality product. And I love the fact that it's made by a beater for beaters. So www.beadonitboards.com. I will also put that website link up in the little eye up there. You can kind of click that, and it will also be in the description down below. So that covers a couple of the questions for today. Come back, we'll tell you more in the next episode of Ask Jilly.